and then the following weekend, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 2 hours credit, depending upon conversations you have with your advisor. This might be able to substitute for another one of your requirements, like an ecology kind of course or something like that. So that's an opportunity. It's only 2 hours though, not 3. And then there's a 597 course on Leopold and the land ethic at the field station as well. It'll be a lot of environmental ethics kind of course. It's 6 days, and it's kind of strange. It's Wednesday, Thursdays for 3 weeks in July. But again, there's housing available at the field station. So if you're interested in either one of those, they can count obviously toward electives, but they might be able to sub for one of your required courses. All right, if anybody is graduating in May, you're almost there, but and is interested, or if you know of anybody that's interested, they are hiring at the National Tiger Sanctuary, which is between Ozark and Branson, kind of partway between. So it's giving tours, but also taking care of the animals and so forth. That's a sanctuary, so nobody gets in with the animals. You're not going to be petting tigers or anything, but you'll be taking care of them and so forth. So if you're interested, they have a web page, but you can also contact me and I can give you more information. So if you know of anybody, let them know, or if you're interested. Okay, any questions about any of those things? Okay, so we ended Tuesday with looking at different variations on the theme of monogamy in birds. And we started that whole discussion with the question, are birds monogamous? So how would you answer that now that we've looked at all of this? Sort of? Okay, that was the original question we had.
Some
species and sometimes. Okay. Anybody else? Well, remember, it is sometimes because of what conditions would cause them to have males to have more than one mate, or only one. What are the resources? Okay. So if the female needs extra help, it's likely to be a monogamous because the male has to be there to raise the young. Okay. So maybe a resource shortage or extreme competition for nesting sites or something like that. They need help. And then only some species is also true because not every species does it. We also talked about the idea of social monogamy, where they may mate with more than one, but they still the male still gives more attention to the first female. Okay. But it's there's lots of females around, there's good resources, nesting sites are available, so then he may go ahead and mate with another, but the first will get the most attention. Okay. And then we ended with this one, that these extra pair copulations and mixed paternities, because the females can store sperm. So even though the majority of the young are going to be from the last male to mate with, there could be some mixed in there. So it really kind of blurs the distinction on monogamy. Okay. A few species are more what we call true monogamous. Some of the crows or the ravens we talked about, are examples. Geese tend to be that way, and some of the others. Any questions about that before we go on? Okay, so the next one is polygyny. And this is where the male has multiple mates. Okay, this is common, but it's not common, if that makes sense. A lot of males will have more than one mate, but they're considered socially monogamous. Okay, so only 2% of all bird species, 2% of 10,000 species, are what we call truly, overtly polygynous. Okay. So only 2%. In the U.S., in North America, we have 278 songbird species, passerines. Only 14 of the 278 are overtly polygamous, polygynous. And of those 14 in North America, 11 of them are associated with wetlands. Okay, now why do you think that they would be associated with wetlands?
A lot of resources.
A lot of resources available in a small territory. Okay? So we call this resource defense polygyny. So they are, a male is protecting a resource. So clumped resources allow easy defense, okay, by the male. It's easy for one male to dominate the area when the resources are very clumped. And it's good for the females too, because it becomes a harem kind of situation with one male and multiple females. But because he has a good territory in that wetland, there's a lot of resources available. So it is a benefit to those bird species as well in the harem. Okay. So now the situation becomes, if there's multiple females, how does that affect raising the young? Well, the females have to share the male help, but as you can imagine, it's greatly reduced. So especially the larger the harem, the less the male is going to be able to help any one female. He's going to be very busy protecting his females, protecting the resource from other males coming in, as well as just the time of hunting resources and taking them to the chicks and so forth. So lots of reduction in health there. But another one is fruit diets favor polygyny. Yes?
With this, do they each have their own nest, or do some of them share nests?
The majority have their own nests, but we're going to talk a little bit about a few examples where they don't. Just a minute. I always send myself emails to remind myself to do things, but the email's down, so I have a note stuck to my phone.
I send myself text messages.
I do too, and I schedule them to go off at a certain time so they remind me in my face.
All right. So don't expect a quick reply on the email from me today, because they took the whole anybody in biology, they took the whole biology department and put us on Office 365 overnight.
Oh.
Now we've all got to go in and do our computers to figure out how to.
Good luck.
All right. So fruit diets. All right. So polygyny. The next one is polyandry. This happens very infrequently. It's just a few species that do this. But this is where kind of the roles are reversed. The males incubate the eggs and take care of the young. And the females defend the territory, compete for the males, and help with the young. So it's a role reversal. And so this is pretty rare. There's just a few species that do this. And again, many of them are related to wetland type areas. The females tend to be a little larger than the males and more brightly colored than the males in these particular species. Now, by bright doesn't necessarily mean like reds and blues and greens, but more distinct and brighter coloration, stronger coloration, if we want to say that. So some examples of this, first of all, the testosterone levels are lower in the males, too, and that helps them to brood the eggs. Yes?
So in these species, do the males still sing?
That's a good question.
That's a
These
good
are
question.
shorebirds, so a lot of them are shorebirds, so they don't have really much song anyway. So by reducing testosterone levels, they're more likely to sit on the nest and take care of the young than they would if they had high. And they're more likely to be in this situation if they know the paternity. They know for sure that they are the mate to that female. So when they know that they are the mate, the parent to the offspring, they're more likely to do this as well. Oh, there they go. But these are some spotted sandpipers are in this group. Some of the rails, which are wetland kind of things. The sandpipers are a little more shorebird type. Phalaropes is another one.
Do we need to know who fits in this category?
I don't know. You're assuming again I have written the text, right? Oh, and it closed my thing. I had some pictures here. I had them pulled up. All right, here's Wilson's phalarope. So here's some pictures. This is the female. Okay, now again, it's not brightly colored. Well, I was right at the beginning. There we go. Okay. She's not brightly colored, but she is strong coloration. So we've got this rusty red here in breeding color, rust in the wings, very distinct black and white, gray and white, and so forth. Compared to the male, which is duller. Okay? So he doesn't have that blackish color. He doesn't have the strong rust. There's a little bit there, but she is much more colorful than the male is. There's the female. Male, and the juveniles always look more like the female usually, in this case the male, until they get their distinct coloration. So this is Wilson's phalarope. All right. And very infrequent that this happens. All right. So another one is cooperative breeding. Cooperative breeding, and this goes somewhat to your question, that some birds will help each other out and even share nest responsibilities and so forth. The advantages for helpers is not clear. So in a situation of cooperative breeding, you usually have helper birds. In many cases, these are the previous young. Okay? I thought somebody was listening. So the young from the previous year or two might be the helpers. It could be a female or a male that doesn't mate, depending on the species. But the advantages is not clear. What could be some possible advantages for the helper birds?
This isn't like the crows where their siblings help. This is random other birds that
No, it
help.
could be siblings. Yeah, it could be siblings from the previous year.
If siblings, then they're related to them, so genetics similar to theirs are still being passed on.
Okay. So the genetics are similar between siblings, so you're still assuring that at least a lot of your genes get passed on. Okay. What do we call that? They had behavioral intelligence.
It's
Okay, altruism, they don't have to be related. So what do we, somebody started it?
Something started with kin.
Kin selection. Okay. So are they really altruistic? Most of the time, no. Okay, it's this kin selection. Making sure that your related genes survive. It may become more altruism because there are some bird species that stick around for a long time. So then it becomes a little more altruistic, but usually it starts with kin selection. And one of the things that occurs is that they have increased testosterone in the helpers. No matter what gender the helper bird is, they have increased testosterone levels. Again, this reduces that desire to incubate eggs, to sit on the nest and reproduce. There's a case, they've been studying Florida scrub jays do this a lot, okay? And they average 6 helper birds for every nest. And usually, again, siblings. And then they have actually found that some of those birds can stay helper birds for up to 7 years. So the likelihood that they're ever going to reproduce is reduced the longer they are the helper bird.
Isn't it a bit counterintuitive to think that they have increased testosterone because then you'd want to do more mating instead of helping?
Well, there's the line. You know, a little bit more testosterone makes you not want to incubate your own if you're a female, especially.
Oh, this is a female we're talking about still.
Well, not necessarily, but increased testosterone to the male can. Well, you're right. It's probably mostly females. However, the testosterone is a big key there. There's even for males, there's testosterone normal. There's some increased testosterone, which would help them help with the nest. And then there's mating testosterone, okay? So it's seasonal how that goes through. So in the case of males, they probably have slightly reduced, and the females have more. Does that make sense? Okay. So do helper birds help or interfere? How could they interfere? Let's talk about how they could interfere first.
If they tried to mate with one of the parents.
Seductive nanny.
Okay, so you could have some of that going on there, trying to mate and interfering with taking care of the young that way.
Does the increased testosterone make them more aggressive?
It could make them more aggressive, yes.
There's like 7 or some helper birds. There's a lot of birds that are floating around.
A lot of birds floating around in that territory,
Could
so
increase
you're sharing
predation.
resources.
Could increase predation.
Okay, potentially predation because you're attracting more attention, okay, to the nest as you have more birds coming in and out. Somebody else had one?
I was going to say that.
Okay. Well, they've actually found in this study of scrub jays, that they fledge more young when they have helpers. So it actually helps them to be able to feed all the young and survive and get up to fledgling state. Okay. Now that may or may not be the case for every species, but they've done a lot of study on the Florida scrub jays. So it's an interesting thing that doesn't happen, super often, but it can happen. Cooperative breeding. All right, so brood parasitism. We've talked a little bit about this. We'll hear about it more now and probably more later as well. Okay. So some birds like to cheat. Okay? They like to cheat. In other words, they like to have young, but they don't want to take care of them. So they cheat by putting their eggs in somebody else's. And a big advantage of this is it allows the females to lay a lot more eggs every year without the potential cost. Okay? If she's not taking care of them, it's no cost to her other than just the production of eggs. And they have found that, like, cowbirds, brown-headed cowbirds, females can lay 30 to 40 eggs a season, and all in different nests. And she raises none of them. Okay, so production can be increased dramatically. This can occur within a species or between different species. So there are some ducks that will do egg dumping and lay their eggs in other ducks' nests of the same species. Coots do this, and they're not ducks, but coots do this. And again, it ensures that some eggs may survive if a nest is destroyed. So now with coots, they tend to take care of their own, but they'll dump in other nests as well. Okay, so she has her nest that she's sitting on, but she's laid eggs in other nests as well. And so if one of the nests gets predated, she'll still have some offspring. So that's kind of the reasoning there. All right. So, but there are those birds that are obligate brood parasites. And this allows more eggs each season, as we mentioned, and improves the chances of offspring survival. So this is the case of the cowbirds are obligates. They never nest on their own. The honey guide birds in Africa. Is everybody familiar with honey guides? They like to eat the bees and a little bit of the honey, but they can't ever get into the hives. So they have this symbiotic relationship with a lot of badger species, and they'll find the beehive, and then they'll go somehow get the attention of the badger, and the badger will follow the honey guide bird back to the nest. The badger will rip it open, okay, and he eats too, and then the honey guide bird eats. So she waits till he's done, and then she goes down and gets her bee larvae and things like that. So they work. It's a really cool mutualistic relationship that they have. Cuckoos. We just have a few species of cuckoos here in the U.S. There are more species around the world. There's one duck species that is an obligate parasite, and I can't tell you which one it is right now. And then there are some finches in Africa that are obligate brood parasites as well. All right, so here's an example of a coot nest. Okay, so this is the typical number of eggs that they lay, and then this is an example of egg dumping, where another female comes in and just adds a whole bunch more eggs. This could be one female or several females that are dumping in this nest. When the female goes out to eat, they come in and lay eggs. Coots can actually count their eggs, so occasionally they'll throw some eggs out.
But they don't know which.
Do they know which one's theirs? And there may be a scent involved, may not be, but they're, birds aren't great smellers. But. Okay.
Surprise.
So this is a cuckoo. Okay. And you can see the cuckoo, the cool thing about cuckoos is that they can mimic the eggs of other species as far as color goes. And so there's usually just a few species that they are obligates with so that they can mimic. So it's similar. Okay, you can see it's very similar. The color may be just off just a little bit. The size is usually off because they're bigger. But they tend to mimic a few species. So this is a cuckoo. And then the brown-headed cowbirds, again, 30 to 40 eggs they may lay. The males, very distinctive with the brown head. The females are just a little more drab. So you look at the tail length and the beak and things like that to help you identify them. And in many cases, if it's different species, like the cuckoos and the cowbirds, the nestlings are at least the same size and usually larger. Usually larger. So how does this benefit them to be larger than the other nestlings?
You crowd them out.
Yeah, you crowd them out. What else?
Like to get fed.
To get fed. In the case of most nestlings, it's the noisy, loud bird that's open and gaping up gets fed first. So in many cases, the cowbird chicks are bigger, they're louder because they're bigger, and they can be up taller than the others, they gape more, and they get fed more. And in some cases, they'll actually push other nestlings out or kill them. Okay? So you've got little bitty warblers, and you guys have been looking at some of the warblers that are raising this big old fat cowbird chick. Okay. They usually hatch earlier. So the incubation time is less for these parasites. So they hatch first, and then they're bigger to begin with. Then they're already getting fed before the others hatch, so they're even bigger yet. And they're usually aggressive young.
So when they hatch, do they look different enough to where the parent can tell? Or does it
A lot of time, yeah, they do look different enough, especially after the down stage when they start putting pin feathers in. But they raise them anyway, which is kind of weird. Now the thing about cowbirds, which we've mentioned before, is it's an habitat edge parasite. So they like those edgy reasons. They're not a forest bird. They like the edge. We see them in town and grassy areas, okay? But they like to nest in the edge. So as we continue to cut up tracts of forest land, especially, we have a big tract of forest, and then we cut it up into small chunks. We may even add some area into it so that we have the same amount of area in both places, but we have lots more edge. So that's one of the reasons that cowbird parasitism is increasing, is because we have more edge out there. So they have access to more species nests. So the cowbird, they don't mimic, they just put them in. Okay. So, and they're bigger. So these are the cowbirds. Here's a cowbird. There's a cowbird egg. This poor bird has got 3 of them. Okay. So again, bigger eggs, hatch earlier, more aggressive. And I think I mentioned that this place I used to work in Texas, South Texas, has this wonderful egg collection back when it was legal. It's fantastic, and it's just nest after nest of those warblers have. But they're seeing still more of it now than they did back then. Yeah.
So for like the birds that would nest in the top right, could the parents potentially like exhaust themselves to death trying to feed these birds?
They won't exhaust themselves to death, but some are not going to get fed. Because these guys are always going to be bigger, set up higher, louder, and in a case like this, probably none of the actual species hatchlings survive. Now in this case, you may have 1 or 2 of them that survive, okay? And the same way with this. But in this case, it's probably, that little bird is probably going to raise all cowbirds.
Would they ever pick at least 1 or 2 of those out of the nest?
Okay, so we're getting there. So how does this really affect? Well, obviously, it limits the reproductive success of the host. Either fewer survive of their young, or none survive of their young. The adult cowbirds, the female, when she comes into lay, she may actually throw an egg out, too. Throw an egg out and then put hers in. So they may lose number of eggs to begin with, but then the young may not survive because they just don't get enough food and can't compete. Excuse me. They are parasitizing 3/4 of all neotropic migrants in one study in Illinois. Okay, 3/4 of all those migrant species, those warblers and so forth, were parasitized in this study in Illinois.
By cowbirds or just in general?
By cowbirds. They're much more numerous than we're going to see cuckoo nests with, for example. So very few nests are succeeding in this particular situation. However, some birds can adapt. I had a robin build a nest on the crook of the drain pipe that comes off the roof, off the gutters. Built a nest there. And I watched several times this female cowbird come down on the roof of the house and then just very slowly hopped her way over toward that nest. And so she was just kind of sneaking up on the nest, waiting for the female to leave. But the male and the female noticed it and would chase her off constantly. So by chasing her off, though, they're leaving the nest exposed. But so some will recognize it and try to fight it. Some will. Some will actually throw an egg out. Okay, they can recognize the other egg and throw it out. But some accept the eggs. So it depends on the species. In a study of, I'm trying to think what it is. I think it was Prothonotary warblers. Y'all, the little yellow one? Okay. That they did a study and found that when the Prothonotaries tried to maybe peck holes in the cowbird egg or throw it out or whatever, that the cowbird female came back and destroyed all the eggs in the nest. So it was punishment for destroying her egg, kind of, so to speak, if we can humanize it a little bit. And so then she lost the whole nest. So Prothonotaries tend to accept it because in this particular study, when they didn't accept that egg, their nest was destroyed. Okay. Yellow warblers will desert their nest in many cases and start over, because birds, if a nest is destroyed due to predation or something like that, or, weather, whatever, they'll nest again. But so in the case of the yellow warblers, they just might just forget that nest, abandon it, and go make another one someplace else. And they even have found yellow warblers will just build a new nest on top of the old one. So they basically destroy their first nest and their first clutch to just build a new nest and try again. So they've adapted in different ways, and depends on the species, how they interact with that. Yes, ma'am?
Do the cowbirds ever check on the nest they laid in from a distance?
Traditionally, they wouldn't have done that when they were following migrating herds.
Oh.
Okay, but now they stick around a little more than they used to, and they still move around a lot. But in the case of the Prothonotaries, they were checking on it because they came back and destroyed the nests. Okay, so occasionally they do, but again, they're all over the place, so they may not come back and check on it either. Okay.
Did they do anything to check on whether the cowbird that destroyed the nest was the same one that laid the egg?
I can't tell you that. When we ban birds in the summer, if we get a cowbird newborn, it is really hard for us to let it go. I mean, we're all really tempted to kill it, but yeah. Oops, sorry, I accidentally killed it. No, it doesn't work that way. All right, the next one is just a series of scenarios. So you can get your cards out and we'll talk through these. Just to talk about different kinds of, these are like great sample test questions too. Everybody needs a card, so get it out. If you don't have one, I have extras. Who needs one? Anybody else? I have one. I see you. All right, so a male shrike catches prey, large insects, small mammals, and impales them, at least some of them, on thorns, barbed wire fences, anything they can get a hold of. So the quality of his food supply is one thing that attracts a female. He can go out and get the prey he needs, okay, and there's plenty around. So with just that information, what type could this represent? So is it true monogamy, social monogamy, polygyny, polyandry, or cooperative breeding? Okay, let's vote. Alright. Now, talk to your neighbor, convince him you're right.
I feel like it could be either of you. What do you think?
I picked A. I was just thinking, just trying to impress the female.
It's true.
So, you've got to go with mine. It's not trying to impress a
It's okay
parent.
with me just because there's excess resources.
I don't know. It could be both.
That's true.
And you picked B.
I was thinking that the quality of his food supply, I guess it doesn't say quantity, it says quality. I was thinking quality or quantity.
That's
So
true, right?
I'm going to go with you.
All right.
I'll be your buddy. Or it could be social monogamy. I don't know.
Monogamy is
Because it's monogamy, but it's not exactly monogamy.
raising and not necessarily.
Who knows? I'll go with A.
Turkey would be a good example of polygyny, right? The wild turkey.
Alright, let's vote again. Alright, there are more B's this time. There are more C's this time. Still A's, but fewer A's. This is a tricky one because you just have a little bit of information about the bird. Okay? So, those of you who said A, why would this be monogamy?
He's trying to impress female.
Okay, impress the female. Okay, showing him what a good territory he has.
If he's showing off his ability to collect food, then odds are he would be collecting food to help feed the young.
Okay. Any other comments on A's? What about a lot of B's? Why would this be social monogamy?
It's a very short stretch from
Now,
monogamy.
you
to
voted
social-
for A, didn't you?
I voted twice. Yes, continue.
Somebody else. Why would this, a lot of B's, so why would this be social?
I mean, I think the main difference between monogamy and social monogamy is that there's probably more food available for social monogamy since he can afford to have more than one mate.
Okay.
So if he was just by
feel like it's
himself
multiple,
with
just
one
compare.
female, he wouldn't be able to get all this food and display it for the female because there would be short resources.
So one of the things we talked about in social monogamy was if there was lots of resources available, okay, he can mate with another one. So that's an acceptable answer as well. All right, and there were a few C's. What's the reasoning for C's? Go ahead.
He's showing off his food, he's showing off how much he could gather for as many females that want to make with him.
Okay, there's plenty of food available. Okay, so he has the potential to be able to feed and help with more, or support more clutches. Okay. So all of those are valid reasons for your answer. So it really could be any one of those three depending on how you supported your answer. So in a situation like this on an exam, I would say pick your answer and tell me why. Okay? So you've got to be able to justify the answer, not just pick one. So a lot of what this is with the Shrikes is that they're just that's how they mark their territory. So it's a little bit showing off the female, and a little bit just showing territory markings as well. So okay, the male participates in brood raising as well as the female. So both of them help raise the brood. With this additional information about the Shrikes, okay, what type does it represent? Okay.
I would
Let's see what you.
E altogether. But I'm going to go ahead and just stick with my answer.
So we have a lot of A's and a few B's. Okay? All right, talk to your neighbor.
We'll stay there. I feel like it's need multiple answers. We need to like. She said she would take multiple instead of explaining her answer. I'm gonna just rip this up and hold like multiple, but like as a buffet of cards. Right. That's so true.
All right, let's do it again. Let's vote again.
Oh wait.
A lot more A's this time. This is probably a great example of monogamy. Although it could be a social monogamy where he gives the majority of attention to the first female. However, it's more likely to be monogamous in this case. All right? So again, justification, yes.
And social monogamy, when it gives more attention to the first female, does that in turn result in greater life success of the young of the first female?
Of the first female, yeah. So we don't know if he's going and helping occasionally with another nest or not. We just know that he does help with this one. So it's monogamy or social monogamy. All right, here we go. Different bird. Black-tailed godwits pair but migrate in winter separately. They return at the same time to nesting territories and renew their pair bond. So what are they? All right, let's vote.
That could be hard not to
Pretty uniformly A. Okay, there's a couple B's. But this is a more example of a monogamy. They come back, they renew their pair bond, they're coming back to the same place. And a lot of birds will nest in the same spot every year. Okay, especially colony nester type birds. But they winter separately. Why would they winter separately? What could be a reason why they would?
Territory for males?
The males get back first. In a lot of
Wait, it
cases,
says they
in this case,
were-
they come back at the same time. It's just some genetic thing in there that they go separate places.
Resources too?
Could be a resource thing. Okay. The Eurasian pied flycatcher sets up a territory, gets a mate, and when the female is incubating eggs, the male sets up a second territory to attract an additional female. Secondary females get less male assistance than the primary.
jerk. I'm ringing my Jerry's phone every time I'm bored.
All right. So, most of you, this would be a great, got this example of social monogamy, because if it's true polygyny, he's giving very little help to all the females that he has. Okay, very little. But if he helps one a lot more than the other, it's most likely a social monogamy. Again, that first female gets the majority of attention. Sandpipers are 25% larger than males. They defend the nest territories and fight each other. Okay. For the male. What would this be? I think I see 100%. It is D, polyandry. Okay, this is one of the few birds that does this, where they switch roles. Okay. One more, I think. Maybe a couple more. Long-tailed widow bird. I showed you a picture of that one. Have the extremely long tails to help attract mates. They defend a territory and develop a harem. So what type of breeding system is this?
Isn't it? Oh yeah. Linings, hairs.
All right. I see mostly C's. So yes, this is a polygyny. Polygyny. It's a harem situation. So one male, multiple females. Okay. And then the advantages and disadvantages to males. What's the advantage to males? Okay, more opportunities to mate, more chance to send those, keep those genes in the system. The disadvantage to male? Okay, in this particular species, his tail is so long it could affect his flight, so he might be more susceptible to predators or things like that. He also spends huge amounts of energy developing that tail and huge amounts of energy defending the territory. What is there any advantage to females? They're protected by a male. What else?
More food.
More food. We talked about usually these harem situations are in food-rich areas. So there's a lot of food availability. What's the downside to females?
Not much parental care.
Yeah, no help. No help from the male. All right, that's it. We will stop there today.
Huh? I can send you the link. I recorded it. I always upload to YouTube because I don't have to save it on my phone. So I'll just